All right, welcome back into another episode of Jake's Takes. I am your host, Jake Masucci, and today we are back. It's episode 100. Super excited for this one. We're talking college football. I'm just going to go right into it. We're talking about week one. We're getting going. Big thank you to you guys for episode 100. This is really, really cool that we made it this far, but I'm going to keep going right into sports because that's what this is, a sports podcast, and I'm super excited for this episode. So let's get right into it here. I want to start with Georgia Clemson because this one was a huge game at the 12 o'clock hour, and Georgia absolutely dominated this game, 34-3. It's kind of what I expected when I talked a lot about Georgia in the preview, which was episode 98. If you guys did not listen to that one, I was super high on Georgia, and it's because of Carson Beck. And Carson Beck, especially in the second half, really got going. You know, he ended up with 278 in this game, 2 touchdowns, and Georgia was able to really figure some stuff out after the first half. So they were up 6-0 going into halftime, and everybody's like, oh, maybe Clemson's okay, and they're doing all this. And then Georgia just flat out dominated the second half. Their running back, Nate Frazier, looked pretty good, 83 yards. He had a touchdown. And then they had a lot of transfers that really stepped up for them. London Humphreys was pretty solid with 2 receptions, 63 yards, a touchdown. And then they had a lot of guys kind of step up. Aaron Smith, not to be confused with Aaron Smith that comes on the podcast a lot. He had a solid game, 5 receptions, 56 yards. And that's the thing with Georgia. They're always bringing in a ton. And they're just such a well-coached team. I love Kirby Smart. He does a really good job. And their defense just didn't miss a beat at all. Clemson could barely move the ball. Cade Klubnik really struggled in this game. And this is just what I expected. Georgia's a much better team than Clemson. And I really think with Clemson, this isn't too much of a knock on them just because, hey, you're going against the best team in the country. You are. And they struggled around the ball a little bit. Their receiver, Antonio Williams, actually looked pretty good. 6 receptions, 76 yards. But Klubnik struggled, and that's because of just how dominant the defense was. The pressure was in his face every single time. It seemed like he had some good moments, which is a good sign for Clemson. But, it's going to be tricky. It's going to be tricky out of that ACC. If I'm a Clemson fan, I'm not too worried. All the ESPN shows and the stuff that I'm listening to, they're just talking about, oh, this is because Clemson doesn't dive into the transfer portal, and all this stuff. It's like, I'm not that concerned about Clemson, all right? I actually think they're going to be a solid team in the ACC and could compete for that title, They're playing the best team in the country in Georgia. So if you're a Clemson fan, you shouldn't be too concerned. Georgia's just unreal, and it'll take some time. The first week, you don't see the best of all of these teams, and that was like a constant theme as we'll get into with some of the other games going on. So the other big 12 o'clock game was the Penn State-West Virginia game, and this game was really, really fun to watch because Drew Aller was awesome. And I've been saying it on the podcast. I am a Drew Aller believer. I think he's unbelievable. They got a lot of guys still back. They got Nicholas Singleton, their running back, Hatron Allen, their running back. And the question with this team was, can they create big plays and can their receivers step up? And guess what? They did. Their receivers were really, really good, especially Harrison Wallace the third it is. He had 5 receptions, 117, 2 touchdowns, and they were able to create big plays down the field and actually make them happen. Drew Aller only threw it 17 times, so they really dove into that running attack, which I do not hate at all. They gave Katron Allen 10 carries. He struggled a little bit, but Nicholas Singleton was awesome with 13 carries, 114 yards. And those 2 running backs are going to be such a key for this offense. But, of course, their defense just flat out dominant. It was awesome throughout the game. West Virginia was able to create some drives. But, looking at it from the long-run perspective, Penn State in a game that was super weird where at halftime they delayed it 2 hours because of severe thunderstorms. They're still able to keep their composure and win a big-time game on the road against West Virginia. I was very impressed with how Penn State played, and I really think this team is scary. We talked about it in the preview. They got a pretty decent schedule. I was pretty high on them making it to the Big Ten championship game, and I still am. I think they can really be a tough team in when it comes down to it and could be a playoff team. So I'm really looking forward to Penn State here. I think this is a great upside win for them, and they could be dangerous when it comes down to it. Iowa had a big win, 40-0. You know, it's finally good to see them scoring a couple points. Again, they started out slow, 6-0 at halftime, just like the Georgia game, but then they really kept it going. Cade McNamara with a solid game. Iowa's defense looked really, really good. They're going to be one of the best defenses in the Big Ten coming into it. I do not think they're the best defense in the Big Ten, but I do think they're one of the top tier. I mean, I probably take Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State's defense over them. I just would. But, you know, like their defense is pretty talented, and a 40-0 win, like them being able to score that many points is impressive for Iowa. You know, they're going to have some big games coming up. I'm really looking forward to next week. They play home against Iowa State. This game's going to be unreal. I'm super excited for this one. Iowa State is a team I'm super high on. Iowa, I was pretty high on going into it. These were both some of my sleepers. I really think this is going to be a fantastic game. And, you know, we'll see what happens. I think Iowa State's going to be near the top in the Big 12, and this can really show me, can Iowa actually be that team that can compete in this Big Ten? So I'm really looking forward to that one. I think it's going to be really good. The other ranked team I wanted to talk about here was Tennessee. They looked unreal. They won 69-3 and just were flat out dominant. Their quarterback, Nico, I'm not going to try to say his last name because it's too long and too hard to say, but he was awesome. Like, he's just got so much composure in the pocket. He threw for 314 yards in the first half with 3 touchdowns. He was just awesome. Tennessee was moving the ball. Tennessee could be scary in the SEC. They could shock some people because this quarterback is one of the more dynamic quarterbacks. He'll probably be more like the Hendon Hooker, the guy that Josh Heupel really, really likes. So I think Tennessee is going to be scary. Looking at their schedule a little bit, they got NC State next week, which will be a really, really cool game. And it's going to be interesting, man. They start out the SEC play at Oklahoma. It's going to be something, man. I think Tennessee is going to be very tough to deal with for a lot of teams, and they got a really nice schedule. They do end up playing at Georgia, which will be tough, but like they get Alabama at home, you know, things like that. They could really scare some teams throughout the year. So I'm really looking forward to next week seeing them play a real team in NC State. And, you know, it's going to be fun. I think their quarterback is really, really talented. And when you have a really talented quarterback in college football, it makes you really, really dangerous. So I'm excited to see Tennessee and see if they continue playing this way. So let's jump to the 3:30 games. I'm going to go Ohio State, Akron here. Ohio State was dominant, flat out dominant. They were able to win this game 52-6. And Will Howard looked decent. I mean, he didn't look anything crazy. I think he was a little better than Kyle McCord looked. He threw for 228 yards, 3 touchdowns. Again, Ohio State started out slow, too. They were only up 17-3 at halftime. And Will Howard, like, you expected just a little bit more. You know, I expected a little bit more out of him. They were using the running attack very well. Travion Henderson was awesome, 8 carries, 65 yards. Quinshon Judkins got the majority of the carries. Only had 55 yards, you know, like he kind of struggled to get going. Akron actually did a solid job defensively stopping the run. But the main story in this game was Jeremiah Smith. Jeremiah Smith, 6 receptions, 92 yards, 2 touchdowns. I talked about him earlier, how scared I was of him. I'm continuing to be scared of him. He's awesome. You know, he is an unbelievable receiver, and Ohio State got a lot of guys. I mean, Carnell Tate showed up in this game, 4 receptions, 58 yards. That could be another name for them. They still have Emeka Egbuka. Ohio State's got a lot of weapons, and we talked about how much talent they had. And it's going to be, can that talent continue to show up week after week after week? And they're playing Western Michigan next week. They got Marshall. Their out-of-conference schedule is really nothing. It's like Michigan last year. Just their Big Ten schedule is a little bit better. I mean, just a little bit better. Like, they get Iowa at home. They're playing at Oregon. They're playing at Penn State. Those are the 2 big games, and they get Michigan at home. So, you know, it's going to be interesting looking at it that way. With Ohio State, though, like, I don't know, man. Like, I expected more. I expected a little more. They didn't even cover the spread. But you know what? With Ohio State here, like, Will Howard, I think he's going to continue to grow. With McCord, it took a little time, too. He wasn't playing the greatest to start. He actually had a really good game at Notre Dame. It's kind of annoying that they're not going to be playing like a really good team because this were the questions with Michigan every year. Like, they'd start out slow, and we were like, oh, is Michigan for real? You know, is JJ actually that guy after his 3 interceptions against Bowling Green? I remember talking about that, you know, like he can't do this in the big games. it happens. You know, you have games where you don't show up completely, and I think 152-6, and I'm saying this, you know, like Ohio State, like there's levels, and they'll be fine, I think. But again, like I don't feel like this performance like says it all about Ohio State, but you know, I need a little more in order for me to say, oh, this is clearly the second best team in the country. That's all I'm saying with Ohio State there. Texas, let's move on to them. They won 52-0. Quinn Ewers was dominant in this game. Arch Manning got in. He had a rushing touchdown and a passing touchdown. Quinn Ewers looked awesome. Okay, Texas, they look legit. I'm really excited for Texas, Michigan next week. We'll dive into Michigan a lot because I actually went to the Michigan-Fresno game, which was really, really cool. Texas was dominant. I'm going to kind of leave it at that because I'm really looking forward to that Texas-Michigan game, and I'll kind of dive deep into that one after it happens there. Let's look at Miami and Florida here. Miami was awesome, dude. Cam Ward was that guy. I mean, he was sensational, really. That play where he moved out of the pocket and then threw it like cross-body into the end zone, it was awesome. He went 26 for 35. He had 385, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. He was fantastic, dude. They struggled to get their run game going a little bit with less than 5 yards a carry, but, dude, I mean, Miami looks really, really good. The fact that they went into the swamp and dominated like they did, 41-17, and I get it, Florida's not really like that great this year. Graham Mertz struggled a little bit, and I don't hate Graham Mertz. Like, I don't really think he's that bad. They just don't really have a great O-line. They're able to get their running attack going a little bit with Montrell Johnson, but that was more because he had that one big run. You know, it's tough here. Florida's just not the greatest team in the world. So, you know, if you're Miami, like, oh, you expect to do that. But the fact that it's like in the swamp and they're able to do that is impressive. I picked Miami to win the ACC. Very pumped about that. Some of the games that I'm looking forward to is they go to Louisville, which will be really cool in the ACC. They go to South Florida out of conference, which will be solid. You know, I think that'll be a solid game. South Florida always plays teams close. They get Florida State at home, which will be an awesome game. And that's right after that Louisville game, which will be cool. And then they play at Syracuse, at Georgia Tech, which Georgia Tech is now a serious game because of their unbelievable win against Florida State. So, you know, looking at it that way, I really think with Miami, like, it's going to be interesting, dude. Like, I think they can definitely win the ACC. They don't play Clemson, which will be really, really cool for them. My prediction was ACC championship, Miami versus Clemson. And I'm remaining with that prediction because I think it's going to happen. And I think Miami's just the best team. I think Cam Ward's clearly the best quarterback in the ACC. And he showed it in this game. Was absolutely dominant. Okay, let's talk about Alabama and Ole Miss, kind of cramp them together. I expected both these teams to dominate right out the gate, and they did. Alabama winning 63-0 against Western Kentucky. Ole Miss winning 76-0 against Furman. Ole Miss does this at the beginning of the year every time. Jackson Dart just goes off, doesn't play the second half, and is just awesome. So Ole Miss, credit to them. They looked awesome. I don't think it says too much. Alabama, I expected this because Kalen DeBoer's first game. You're home, you know, like this is just a huge game. Let's put on a show. And they did. Jalen Milroe looked awesome. I'm very excited for this Alabama team. I think you know, like with this, Milroe was 7 of 9, 200 yards, 3 touchdowns. They're able to run the ball. Like it was a really, really good game. Milroe had 79 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns too. He looked awesome. He looked awesome in this game. And now you're playing home against South Florida, who like that's a little bit of a better team. So I'm excited for the next week again. And I think it'll be good. And then you got 2 tough ones in a row. You play at Wisconsin, and then you play home against Georgia. You know, like this is Alabama, like taking steps, and we're seeing, okay, like can they continue to move up, get better, and continue this? So I'm really excited to see Milroe continue throughout this year. He looked great, and I think Alabama, again, going to be really, really scary. I had them starting out hot, and I think they'll continue to keep that going. So Alabama, I'm excited for when it comes to there. All right, let's switch into the night games. Okay, let's go Notre Dame, Texas A&M first. Notre Dame with an unbelievable win. Right, this is what I talked about in the preview. I was high on Notre Dame. I thought they were going to be able to do it with A&M. Their defense is really, really good. A&M struggled to move the ball. It's Connor Weigman, right? Yeah, I believe it's Connor Weigman. Yeah, Connor Weigman struggled. He was 12 for 30, 100 yards, 2 interceptions. Notre Dame was just all over the place in this game. You know, they looked like the clearly more physical team because they were able to get their run game going too. Jeremiah Love was unreal. 14 carries, 91 yards. He had that late touchdown to win them that game. And Riley Leonard, just a game manager, not throwing interceptions, not doing anything. You know, I didn't expect him to be Sam Hartman. I expected him to be just a guy that can be like Cade McNamara for Michigan 3 years ago. You know, like that's what I expected for Riley Leonard coming to Notre Dame, and he was able to do that. You know, like slow game management, things like that. This is a big win for Notre Dame, and I'm super happy for Marcus Freeman because I really like how he coaches football. They get Northern Illinois, Purdue's next game, and then you know, they get Louisville at home. Looking at some of the other ones, they go to Georgia Tech again. Another interesting game, hopefully. And then they get Florida State at home, and then their last game's at USC. And USC will be the last one we talk about, but they looked really, really good last night. Looking at all those games, like I really think with Notre Dame, they're going to be high, and I feel like they're clearly a playoff team. I really do. I think they're going to be very dominant throughout the year because they're only going to get better from this. And the fact that they can go to A&M, one of the toughest places to play in the country, and win that game, I think is very, very impressive. I get it, A&M's new coach, you know, all this stuff, it's all new, but Notre Dame able to continue and get that dub. So I really think that was impressive there. I want to talk about Oregon quickly. They did not impress me. They won this game 24-14 against Idaho. And, I mean, like, Dylan Gabriel threw the ball a lot, didn't make any mistakes. He was 41 of 49, 380, 2 touchdowns, and they were able to run the ball. It just didn't seem like they were finishing drives at all, you know, which made it really, really tough. Yeah, they're tricky, man, because, like, if you look at the stat sheet, like, they look really, really good, but you look at the score and they didn't win by that much. You know, I expected more from Oregon here, and I picked them to win my Big Ten championship. I'm a little less high now. I am. They go against a tough team in Boise State next week, and I really think this will be a wake-up call for them. Like, okay, you know, you had your cupcake supposedly against Idaho. Maybe Idaho is really good. Like, again, I didn't watch this too closely, but like I watched some of the highlights and I watched some of the things to try to formulate an opinion here. And I'm just like, man, like you just expect a little more. So this Boise State game is going to be definitely interesting. Boise State's running back had an unreal game against Georgia Southern. Can they slow down the run there? And can Dylan Gabriel like create those big plays and finish drives? You know, those are going to be the questions for Oregon going into that one. Again, just expected a little more. That's it. I expected a little more from my Big Ten champions, that my pick there. So everything else, like Georgia, Utah looked great. They dominated, I think, on Friday, I think it was. And Miami, like I loved what I saw from them. Oregon, I expected a little bit more. That's it. And my contender non-Power 5, or Power 4 now, excuse me, which is Notre Dame, again, with a huge win against A&M. So looking at those ones, like I think Oregon's the only one I'm concerned about there, but overall, you know, it will definitely be interesting. Okay, Michigan-Fresno. So I was at this game. Ann Arbor was awesome. You know, this was actually my first game at the Big House, which was super cool. You know, our family is huge Michigan fans, and we've tried to, like, they go a lot, you know, but when I was younger, I was just really sick and never got to go. I always had something with my asthma and things of that nature. So I finally got to go to a game. Home against Fresno. I thought this was a really, really, I thought it was going to be a good game. I was like, oh, man, I'm excited. This was such a boring game. It really was. I saw Fresno play last year. I talked about it on the podcast with Mikey Keene against Purdue, and they were able to win that game. And I was like, oh, maybe it's not a good sign that I'm going to this one. But Michigan, like, their defense was awesome. You know, the physicality. Like, Will Johnson had a play early in the game where he just, like, got right in on the running back. And I'm just like, gosh, this talent is unreal. And the main thing I noticed, like, walking into the building and watching Michigan warm up was just how big they looked. They looked huge, you know? And I was like, man. Like I was really, really impressed with that. And, you know, even the, like, Ohio State game I went to 2 years ago with C.J. Stroud and all those guys, like, Michigan looked bigger. You know, they just look bigger than a lot of the teams that I've seen in the past. I saw Washington play last year. Like, it didn't seem that way with that Washington team either. They just seemed so dynamic, and I was just so impressed with Penix's ability to throw down the field. Here, it's just the defense looked big, physical, fast, you know, all that stuff. And, you know, like the defense, I'm not worried about. I think with Michigan here, it's just going to be, it's the question is the quarterbacks, man. That's the question. And Davis Warren, Alex Orji, they're both very mediocre. You know, Davis Warren really struggled in this game. He was 15 for 25, 118, one touchdown, one interception, and he just wasn't impressive to me at all against a Fresno defense that is okay. I mean, it's not the greatest thing in the world. It's very average, but I just expected a little bit more. And I expected Michigan to have more of a running style than they did. Mullings was unreal. He had 15 carries, 92 yards. And again, like I was talking about this off air with a lot of people, like Michigan only dominated late and was able to score a lot because Fresno was gassed, you know, physically. And that's how Michigan has to beat teams, you know. And with this schedule, I really think it's going to be tricky to do that. You know, you're going against Texas. I don't think Texas is going to be physically brutalized by the fourth quarter like Fresno State was. I just don't. The Michigan environment is unbelievable, and I think that might make it tough for Quinn Ewers because Mikey Keene, I think, is a really, really good quarterback. Like, he had an okay game. It was just tough for him against that great of a defense. And I think it'll be the same thing with Quinn Ewers. He's an unbelievable quarterback, but he's used to those environments, man. He won at Alabama last year, you know, so now he's going to the big house and he's like, oh, I can just do this again, you know? And with Texas, man, I just think it's going to be really tough for Michigan, especially when they don't have this quarterback thing really figured out because the offense just did not look good against a Fresno defense that was just ready. Like they were all in the box, like ready for the run, making you throw down the field. And Warren just couldn't do it, you know, and that's what I'm concerned about. Texas will be more in the box, ready for the run, which is just going to make it tricky. And then the one thing on defense that I was a little concerned about is Wink Martindale does love his blitzes, and they blitzed a lot more, and Mikey Keene was able to hit some balls over the top. What do you think Quinn Ewers is going to be able to do? Like, I really think he'll be able to cook us like that too, and I think I'm a little concerned about Dylan Gabriel and Miller Moss now, you know, being able to do that to us too. So it's going to be tricky here. We're just playing a lot of better teams than last year, you know, as a Michigan fan, and I'm a little concerned here. This is why I had them as like a 9-3, 8-4 team. And while I love this defense, I think this defense is unreal. I just do think with these new pieces at coordinators, like I just think it's a little less than what we had. It definitely is. So, you know, happy with the win, 30-10 against Fresno State, but this Texas game is going to be tough, and I'm really looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to hopefully Michigan just proving me wrong in how I'm talking about it right now. But that's just my honest opinion there, you know, with that aspect of it. And those were the Saturday games here. Kind of turning over to Sunday a little bit was the LSU and USC game. And this game was awesome. It was a really, really good game. Miller Moss was so impressive throughout this game. His ability to just move in the pocket and create plays was awesome. I think USC was very impressive. I did not expect him to look that good. Zachariah Branch is such an elite athlete, and they had a couple guys. That one-handed catch was unreal for USC, and they were able to sneak it out. They had a great drive to end the game, and were able to run it in. LSU, like, just falling apart in these first games, and I fell victim to it last year. I was very hyped with their transfer portal, and I was trying to find somebody else to win it all. I didn't want to just pick Michigan. I picked Michigan to make that championship and have them lose to LSU. I should have just gone with Michigan right away. But yeah, I mean, with LSU this year, it's similar stuff. Like, I like their quarterback, but you know, they just can't get it done. They can't get it done when it counts, and that's kind of what it's been like. I like Tennessee more than them this year. I like a lot of the other SEC teams, Missouri more, stuff like that. I think it's going to be tricky for them. I could see them going 8-4, 9-3, you know, somewhere around there. The SEC is just so good now, so good, you know, which is going to make it tough for them. The game tonight, Boston College, Florida State. I'm recording this on Memorial Day, and that one will be interesting. I think Florida State bounces back, gets a big-time win. DJ didn't even look that bad the week before against Georgia Tech. Just Georgia Tech was able to control the game, and, you know, you were in Ireland. It was a weird situation. It really was, and it was kind of like ready for it. I was telling everybody to ride Georgia Tech in that one because I really thought like, hey, Georgia Tech's like ready to take that next step, and I really think they are. They're going to be near the top of the ACC. I really think that. I really think so. Their running attack is so strong, and their defense is a lot better. So I think they'll be near the top of the ACC. If you're a Florida State fan, you shouldn't be too worried. I think that you're going to be able to win some games. Just the schedule's tough, and that's what we talked about in the preview a lot. The schedule's really tough. I mean, going to Duke, you're playing Clemson at home, you're going to Notre Dame, you're playing all the teams this year, and you're going to Miami. I just skipped over that one too. So you're playing all the games this year, which just makes it tough. So if you're a Florida State fan, you should be a little concerned just because that Georgia Tech game you kind of had to have. But going into this Boston College game, I think you get this one done. I get it. It's who is it? Bill O'Brien? Yeah, Bill O'Brien's first game against you. But you get this done, and you should be all right. You'll be near the top of the ACC too with Clemson, Miami. But for me again, Miami is that top tier team in the ACC. So looking at week one, it was super fun, super fun, and I'm just so excited to be talking football again. College football's back. We're doing our NFL preview later in the week, but really cool week of college football week one. That's going to wrap up this episode of Jake's Takes today. Thank you so much. It's episode 100. Super cool stuff. If you're on YouTube, go like, subscribe, do what you got to do to help out the show. Spotify, give us those 5 stars and follow the channel because this thing is so much fun. It's so much fun. And I'm really happy I got to episode 100. It's super cool stuff. But that's going to wrap up the show for today. We got NFL preview coming at you at the end of the week, probably near that Thursday night mark. We'll see when Aaron and I can schedule it, but we'll make it work. Trust me. We're on it right now. So I'm excited for football to be back, and that's going to wrap up the show for today. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.